I've just come back up to the factory at 7 p.m. Oh, frig, lost the will to live at about 2 o'clock this Savo. It was 36 degrees in here. Awful. I was going to spray the second nacelle up, my wave breaker, and so Janet and I went home, went out to swim, come back, thought I'd be a bit cooler. Oh, it's 34 degrees in here in the factory, but I've got to get it sprayed up, so that gives me about 7 or 8 minutes of work time to get out the gel coat. I'm going to put 2 cups of white gel, maybe a third, into this to just get it done, and then in the morning, first thing, we're going to lay it up. It is just so hot and humid at the moment. We've got a wet week coming up, so I just want to get on top of all these jobs. And this is the last mould I have to make, so I'm going to knock it up and get it out of here. I'll put on a suit, wrap up your feet. All of a sudden, it's 48 degrees, not 34, so bloody awful. But anyway, I'll get in and get it done. It's going to be dark soon, so hopefully it'll chill off a little bit, and then we've got a bit of a cold change coming through later in the week. So, mate, the last couple of days has been just brutal up here. Alright, that was pretty ordinary. It's still 32 degrees in here. It's bloody awful. I've got a temperature gauge on the wall up here that I use to give me that ambient temperature, but, you know, never ever good spraying this stuff over about 25, but look at that, I sprayed this like 10 minutes ago. Gone off. That sort of isn't that great, but 1.2 litres of gel coat on that, and that's pretty much optimum. You don't want to go any more than that. It's about 1.8 millimetres thick. I think that's more than enough. Now I need to put a little fillet down the centre of this just because it's such a sharp angle there. And I did it on the other one and it worked a treat. It made it nice and solid and gave us a very easy radius to laminate into. But yeah, that's done. I'm going home. It's nearly dark.
No. Port. Starboard. Tail. Not difficult.
I'm really struggling. We just had a big barney because I can't work out, because the boat's not pointing that way. I can't work out port and starboard. She's Janet just let me have it, and she's gonna have the last word.
See how it works when you read the label?
What a smart ass. Honestly, marry a Northern English woman. Smart ass. Oh yeah. Get on with it. Exactly. Let's just stop talking and laminate. That's what it's all about. Righto, nacelle number 2, done. We smashed that out in about an hour and a half. That is the last mould of the entire set, and I'm pretty happy to get to that stage. It's all peel plied, all ready to go. I've got a couple of issues with the nacelles. It's going to take a major effort to get them fitted because I have to physically lift the boat off the truck, slide the truck back, or drop the boat, roll the truck back, change the structure of the truck to fit it with the nacelles on it. I hadn't thought about that, but anyway, that's got to be done. Janet's been absolutely instrumental in making these parts. It's been brilliant having her help, and she has just been so good. I'd employ her anytime. I mean, she's one of the hardest working people I've ever met, and she just smashed that out. Janet asked me the other day for some jobs, and I've got about 4,000 of them, so one of which is to restore our davits, and those davits there were recovered off a boat that basically he pulled them off there to build some other arrangement and then dumped them in his girlfriend's backyard, as far as I know, and 10 years later I scored them for 200 bucks. So I thought that was good value. The only problem is they've seen better days. Now I've sat them in place here for the last 3 or 4 months, just to make sure that I've got them in place. And as you can see here, I've marked them. Now they actually mount with some holes that screw up through the bridge deck into what is, these two are actually right on the edge of our lounge suite. So I have them currently propped up with these acro props, and in order to be able to complete the back of the boat here, I need to remove them, and they also need to be restored. As you can see here, we've got a little bit of delamination and they're cracked and pitted, and we want to sand them up and make them like new again. And I'm going to do some further laminating on them just to improve them. And they look pretty ordinary, although they look fantastic from a distance. They're pretty ordinary. So I'm going to get into this today and get them off. Janet's going to help me get them off. So I've done a locator hole on each of these davits, and basically that means I can put them back in exactly the same spot. And the great thing is it goes up inside that lounger at the back rather than up into my cockpit. I didn't want to have a stainless plate inside my cockpit. I'm better off to hide them within the storage, and they'll also likely have some sort of a stainless swage cable back to a U-bolt on the back of the transom, which will make them even stronger and able to withstand even more weight hanging off them. But for now, we're going to get them off, take them up the factory, give them the sand, and we'll get on with it. Before we take them off, I've made some little foam blocks. Now these are going to be glassed onto the boat, but if you have a look here, there's a rebate here, and this davit's going to sit down on this, which will be laminated in. So I've made them to fit. I want to draw around that, so I give them exactly the right place. And I'll glass and shape that so it's got a further support. Another one to this side. These are taped together with glue. And I have to do all that before we put the davit back in place. Alright, so I've got these blocked in here, and that's going to form a nice little support. Right, let's see how good you are at restoring stuff. Our dirty cheap davits are getting a makeover, and I'm pretty happy that someone else is doing it. So I've got Janet out the back. She's set up out the back with the sander, just going to sand them down and sort of let me establish what we're working with. They are fiberglass, and they have an element of I imagine foam core and fiberglass and plywood in them, but I intend to seal them. They look pretty good, but there's a lot of chips and scratches, still some old sealant here where they were joined onto the boat, and they're going to need a really good once over. So while Janet works away on sanding the davits, in fact we found some stress cracks on them, and they're going to require a little bit of structure to be applied at a later date. But while she worked on those, I epoxied the foam support blocks for the davits in place on the stern and prepared to shape and laminate them in place. Plenty of little jobs going on here, and we'll leave the davits completion for a later date, as there's so much more to do before we can actually attend to those.
So you may remember that I put these foam pieces in the hatches some time back. So there was gaps all the way around so that I could actually lay up properly. But what we've done is put a mixture of polyester and cotton flock in the edges, which is light but solid. And then after I'm going to do all the hatches like that, you can see I've done about half a dozen here. I've got some more to do. And then once that's done, I'll put some on this one. I'm going to put some 600 probably, and then an edge of 600 reinforcement, and then that should do it. It'll be done, and then that, if you can see, is one of the bathroom floors.
Yeah, cool, done.
Yeah.
I'll have to buy the little toggles for them.
And then those over there, I don't know if you remember my episode, in that really small compartment of a hatch at the front of the boat where I was really quite stressed. Well, anyway, that's the hatch that goes over the top of it, so we're gonna have to, I've got the 600 on this, so we only have to put a 300 on that and then a 300 rim and it should be done.
Yep, you got about 8 more to do.
Yeah, I know.
But we'll get them.
It's like being at play school.
Yeah, just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Well done. There's this thing that happens every time a good song comes on. Like it's an understatement.
Well, I can't help it when a reef is on.
Get down and get back up again. How can you possibly be so joyous laminating?
I haven't started, that's why.
Good. So we're just finishing off these hatches, just putting a couple of little layers on the top just to get them ready for flow coat. So basically they've got a foam core, then they've got a filler in them. They look great actually. So we just give them a light sand and a quick flow coat and all be done, won't it? Well done, Don. Need to do another one here. Doesn't have to be anything fantastic because it's basically just a barrier between the foam and the filler, and I wouldn't worry about being too detailed. Just get them done. Brilliant. Well done. If there's anyone on YouTube that deserves a like, it's you, Jen. Because honestly, you've smashed them out, and you have not stopped for 3 days on these hatches, and I'm really super impressed. Let's have a look over here. We've got bathroom floors, hatches, all done. So they're now complete, and all they're going to need is a chop off, a bit of a tidy up, and some flow coat, and they are done, ready for hinges and small shackles and the like for lifting them up into the floors. That's taken such a load off my job list, but also when you said you were never going to build a boat, I'm so impressed. You've just taken this on with no problems at all. But I'm going to pinch your resin now you're done. I've got stuff to do. So I thought I was really clever the other day. I ordered these blind flanges to go up here on the top of our stainless tubes. So these are going to look the business. If I can get the other ones done, that'll be really good. But I'll have to cut the pipe to suit the thickness. I'm probably going to core the foam here as well. Not really sure what to do here, but I'll work it out. There is another blind flange I've got for the top sides as well. And I ordered the slip-on flanges to weld down at the level of the top of the lounge here, and guess what? No good. It's freaking 118 millimeters rather than 101.6, which in my books is 4 inches. So there's the proof there. They've sent me the wrong bloody flanges, and they're like 120 bucks each, these things. 316, and yeah, not happy about that. A couple of weeks ago we fabricated a large cover trim piece to become part of our transom. Now Janet and I toed and froed as to whether to use this or to sand and fair it to a smooth finish, and ultimately we decided to use it as we thought it might provide a nice bit of detail on an otherwise all white boat. Alright, we've got this trim made up the other day, and I've just deduced that we're going to have to trim down to about the edge of the flange that's on it, so the margin between the there and that edge there. I'm going to trim it along there, and then I'm going to sand all that edge, and then I'm going to fair that all back in to the boat itself. Now those little buttons that are along the back there, they're to hold canopy buttons that will allow those bungee cords to hold down a curtain that comes down from the top here. So I've got to be careful I don't damage any of that as I sand this back. I'm going to be a lot of sanding and a lot of grinding to be done here to get this all sanded up to get it faired in place. I'm going to glue it on with epoxy first, screw it in, and then I'll come back and sand it all and get it all integrated. Alright, I've just worked out I need to grind back all the gel coat to that black line. In fact, this whole back is going to be resprayed. I'm not happy with it, and especially where that area got stuck there, and it's a little bit thin. It was one of those real difficult areas to do, so I might as well respray the whole thing. But I've got that cap sort of sitting roughly back in place. Where the black line is underneath and above it is basically going to all have to be grind it off and or sand it off, and then basically come back and re-gel coat the whole thing once it's all laminated in place. But that'll be pretty simple. I still have to fair the life raft area now. I am seriously considering spraying all this up next week. I've got to wait for a bit of dry spell of weather. We've had a shocking couple of weeks, really hot and super humid, and I'm not going to prepare and do any sort of fairing and sanding until I get a run of around about 4 or 5 days. It's only going to take me a day to spray all this and get it all looking beautiful. But preparation's everything, and this area here is going to be a pretty major focus of the boat, particularly when the tender's out. So anyone coming up to the back of the boat, it's sort of more important than the front really, because this is the area that everybody arrives on. But yeah, I've got all the anti-slip glued down today. Everything's complete. That cap is going to now come off, and I'm going to get my grinder out, get my vacuum, and make a mess. I was down there, as you can see I'm covered in dust, but I was down there grinding the seam down there on the ladder with the grinder, and fair dinkum, I reckon lightning hit about 50 feet away. It was pretty horrendous. It scared the shit. There's another flash. Wow, it is serious. We have had some massive storms the last couple of weeks. We're talking 300 mil in an hour. We're talking, that's what's that? 10, 12 inches of rain in an hour. Last night before last, and then this afternoon, mate, this thing's just hit. Wow. So I have just grinded and belt sanded and flat disced and sanded that entire edge, so that I'll be able to either put my cap in, but I'm looking at it now wondering whether I should try to fair that out. But I think my cap's going to look quite nice. Anyway, it's done and it's ready, but Jesus, look at the dust. It is just everywhere. So what I'll do is I'll vacuum that straight up. And it has been a huge storm, so we're a little bit, it's very humid. So what's actually happened is the dust has just settled straight down on the boat, and I need to vacuum that straight up, or it's going to be here for weeks if I don't get rid of most of it now. So I'll get onto that, and hopefully have a bit of a cleaner environment to work in tomorrow. I am absolutely covered in dust. I mean, wow, and it's 35 degrees, so yeah, not very nice at all. Look at this. I mean, I never ever leave my boat like this. If you leave it like this, it's going to blow into every orifice, and you'll be breathing it for the next freaking 2 years. And I see a lot of boat builders that don't clean up after themselves. I'm paranoid about this dust. We've got welding going on next door. It smells great. I love the smell of welding. We're going to fit this transom cap onto the back here. Now you'll notice I've put in a couple of pieces of foam on the ends here where the hull and the deck didn't quite meet, and that's going to be packed out, and then I'll be able to fair this whole thing back in. So I've just given it a good clean with some acetone. It's been pretty much like that for a while. I put a layer of vinyl, a couple of layers of 600 double bias on just to reseal the seam as I started to grind it all back. And in here I've got my epoxy mixing machine getting ready to go. Down into the this is the lab, Janet's lab down here. And I've got a perfect whack there. That's perfect. Look at that 2-to-1 ratio. I like it. Righto, I'll leave you to it. And I expect that to be a perfect brew, honey. Righto, bring it up. You ready to join it?
Yeah. Another big step.
It is a big step. It's been, there's a lot of decision making here. We were trying to decide whether to use or not. We figure it'll make the boat a little bit different. On it. So smearing all over the place. Go up into that hole. Just stay with it. Got to actually lift it up on top
Can you
of this.
stop talking and just do it?
I'm talking to the camera. Got to lift it up on top of this foam packing. Sorry, Janet. Camera's more important than you.
You're making me wait till
Well, you know it is more important. Stop bumping your gums and get on with it.
Thanks. I don't know how long I can hold it. That's all.
I don't want to distort it too much there. At the bottom. Cannot make a video. Janet's a bit intolerant of my video making.
I'm not intolerant. My arms are aching.
You're intolerant of my video making. I'm telling the truth. You actually go. You look like your head's going to explode.
It's hard.
You don't have to hold that side, this side anymore. Just hold the other
Thank
side.
you for letting me know that. Just it was hard to hold.
Good job. Someone likes YouTube. Don't pull that in.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we're right. You can let it go now. Righto, so I've spent the last 2 hours just grinding this nice and smooth along here, and as you can see, it's going to look like it's all one piece. I've basically smoothed it out. I'm trying to get it fair so that it is going to look like it actually belonged on there and became part of the actual mould. A little bit there, I've got to repair the gel coat on there, but I'm basically going to put 2 layers of glass here with a layer of finishing cloth here just to build it up so that I can then spray the gel coat and fair it back in after a good fairing. But what I'll do is I'll just get into it now and do a bit of laminating, and then I'll leave it overnight, peel ply it up and leave it overnight, and then we'll get back into it tomorrow. All right, about 2.5 hours later, that is now fully integrated, and you can see it's actually going to look like it's one piece. The whole idea of this is to get it faired so that it looks like it was never a second part. It's ideal if I can get it pretty much faired in. I think that won't be a problem now that I've got that nice and smooth. There's 2 layers of surfboard cloth, and I just put 1 layer of top matting in there just to give it a little bit of body, because I needed some fill, but I didn't want to put anything too heavy on there because obviously it's not structural, it's already glued in place. It just needed something to dress it up. So that 300 CSM just gives it a little bit of fill without any wasted cloth and too much body. But yeah, that's looking pretty good. I think I've finished off the ends quite nicely. It does sort of now look a bit uniform.